Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I'm here to talk about Aslan versus Anton Turkalj 2. These guys fought 3.5 years ago. It's where Aslan was handed his only loss, and it's by rear naked choke in round 2 to Anton Turkalj. But every other fight he's been in, he's won. 12 fights, 12 wins, 12 knockouts. Aslan is a fucking monster. And of those 12 knockouts, I think 11 of them come in round 1. I know 11 of them come in round 1. And there's only one of them that comes in round 3. But that's it. The majority of his fights are over inside of round 1. And I still have questions about how he's going to look in any sort of fight down the stretch, but especially a competitive fight. And I want to see him answer those questions before he has my trust. Anton Turkalj did have to weather a storm in their first fight. He took an ass kicking because the guy Aslan was all over him. A distinct power and physicality advantage, roughing him up, ripping him to the mat. He was the much stronger fighter, and Anton Turkalj was a step behind but surviving. And then after getting ripped to the mat again in round 2, halfway through the round when they were on their feet, he was the much fresher man, pressuring Aslan, then ripped him to the mat, and it was over shortly thereafter with a submission. And Anton Turkalj, he's a guy that does have that seasoning. He's got fewer fights than Aslan, but he's got a wealth of amateur experience that Aslan does not have, and he is a much more comfortable fighter. The thing is, he's not such a physically imposing fighter. Anton Turkalj. He's a guy who is much more technical, and generally he's going to have to overcome some danger here, I think, no matter what, against Aslan. Uh, and I'm aware Aslan, of course, is fighting the one guy that beat him, and the one major failure in that fight was his cardio. So he's probably going to be trying to fight differently. I'm sure in the back of his head, or maybe the front of his head, he's thinking about how things could go wrong in this fight. But sometimes you're better off just being the bull. I've always said this about different first round monsters that try to fight more economically and whatever. Sometimes you're better off just fucking hitting the floor with the gas pedal and going for it. And that might be the case here. Aslan's a big, strong guy. I don't know if he's ever going to have great cardio, but I know he's always going to be a problem for his opponent in round 1. And I think he will bring the trouble for Anton Turkalj. I expect him to be bullying him. I think the chances of him getting a finish have gone up pretty drastically since Anton Turkalj was knocked out by Tyson Pedro in his last fight. But still, that's the one time. And I do have a lot of big questions about what happens if he doesn't get that first round knockout. So I'm picking Aslan. I guess I'm picking him to win by first round knockout, and I will bet on it when the props present themselves. But even at toss up odds here, whatever they are, minus 110 and minus 120, the odds are pretty much even. I'm not betting on the money lines. I'm going to just throw a few sprinkles on the props and hope to learn more about both fighters. Anton Turkalj winning down the stretch. Of course, if submission is much greater, I'll play submission. I think it's more likely. But in general, I would just play the finish because I think cardio would be the difference maker. And Aslan, I think it's always going to be worth it. Well, I can't say it's always going to be worth it because I don't know what the odds look like yet, but I do think if he wins, it's much more likely to be a first round finish. He's a guy who, by the way, his one fight in round 3 that he had, he was taken down and mounted in rounds 1 and 2. It was a sloppy affair. But even though it's not like he spent a lot of time being mounted, he was able to reverse position. But despite getting the finish in round 3, and it was a beautiful finish, it still wasn't a great look for his cardio. And I have to think if he found himself in those same spots with Anton Turkalj deep into round 2, taking him down and mounting him, he probably wouldn't make it out of the round. So there's enough doubt with him where I can't bet on his money line, even though he's my official pick. But again, I'll wait for the props and I'll bet on the props. So we'll see how this one goes. Hoping to learn more about these guys, especially Aslan. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other video.